Good afternoon, everyone, and this is again your learning partner, Teacher Anna. Now, let's have our next lesson. So, last week we have learned and reviewed uh, lesson 1 to 4 for our Philippine politics. Now, let's go to lesson number 5. So, this is part of Unit 2 class. This is the development of the Philippine democracy. And we are now in lesson number 5. This is early political systems from pre-colonial times until the Philippine Revolution. Now let's go to our intended learning outcomes. So at the end of the lesson, guys, you are expected to discuss the factors influence the growth and development of the barangay and the sultanate during the pre-colonial period. And then discuss how the native Filipinos affected by Spanish colonialism and identify how did American imperialism affect the Filipino struggle for independence. So at the end of the lesson, guys, you are now going to discuss the factors influence the growth and development of the barangay. So as you all know now, our barangay is or having a very good system. We also have the Sultanate in the past. This is the during the pre-colonial period. And then discuss how the native Filipinos affected by Spanish colonialism, and then identify how did American imperialism affect the Filipino struggle for independence. Now, let's go to the next slide. So this is the early pre-colonial political structure. So, sa una, naapay dato from different barangay. We also have the royal class, okay, for the Tagalog, and the royal class for Visayan clan. So, the pre-colonial Filipino communities share some cultural similarities with ancient communities in Southeast Asia and even in Polynesia. The first communities that were established were defined by inter-island trade and seafaring, and these activities contributed to the growth and expansion of the first barangays. So tungod sa pagsakop sa ato, guys, there is an inter-island trade. So, maybe a lot of historians would say na paraan ni nila para masakop ta. But there is also a good thing about it because there would be an inter-island trade. And then ancient communities were situated on riverbanks and close to the sea. So nganong kasagaran sa in the past culture, dool ang ilang mga balay sa riverbanks o dool pud sa dagat. It is because they are good in fishing. So dito nila ginakuha tanan like tubig para panglaban nila, para sa ilang food, they go fishing, para sa ilahang mga gikinahanglan like for example for drinking water kay sa una limpyo pa kayo ang mga rivers. So dito sila nagakuha pud og tubig nga ilahang mainom. So that's why they are situated or they are near the river banks and close to the sea. So the people depended on maritime travel. And then sa unang panahon po, kani siya nga time na-invento na ang bangka, ang sasakyan nga pangdagat. So that's why their livelihood was primarily based on access to bodies of water such as seas and rivers. Land-based communities meanwhile were nomadic. So katong naa sa mga land-based or kanang naa sa kagubatan sila nagpuyo, they were nomadic and lived by hunting animals and gathering plants. So nabuhi sila by hunting animals and by gathering plants. With the advent of agriculture and improvements in technology, small bands of people began to come together and form large communities called barangay. So, tuod ani, nagtapok-tapok ang mga tao, or there is a small bands of people, and then, sa kadugayan, nag-form na sila og barangay. So, or kani siya nga communities ginatawag og barangay. Now, let's go to the next one. So let's go to the barangay system. Okay. So now let's have the barangay system. So sa barangay system, guys, there is a dato, there is a maharlika, and there is a sultanate. So let's try to know more about them. So the barangay was the basic political unit that existed throughout the Philippine Islands prior to the 1400s. Each barangay was an independent polity. So it means they have different political entity which exercise authority over several communities within a defined territory. So barangays also interacted with other communities. So sama sa nagapanghitabo karon, so the other barangays would seek help for the other barangays. So sa unang panahon po, they also seek help or interacted with other barangays na para matabangan sila in different programs and activities. And there is evidence of the establishment of political military alliances. So naapod siya alliances sa una. Sa unang panahon, magsurya ang mga dato, mga leader sa isang barangay para makig-alyansa para mabatukan ang mga mangsasakop sa una. So they are mga Spaniards, mga inana. So para maprotektahan ang ilang barangay, they form a political military alliances para ma-protect ang bawat barangay. So now let's go to Dato. So the barangay was led by a Dato who rose to the position either by birth or by valor and feats achieved in war. So, sa unang panahon, may mukhang Dato kung imuhang angkan or imuhang papa bakaron or imong lolo is also a Dato. So that is by birth or by valor. Now, we also have mahimo po kang dato kung you achieve uh, winning or nadaog ka sa isa ka gubat. So, in lesson 2, the word dato referred to the chieftain. However, in the Visayas, the term dato referred not only to the chieftain as an individual, but to an entire social class that included the relatives and friends of the chieftain. So in Luzon, the noble class was called maharlikas. Sa Luzon ni siya, ginatawag sila og mga maharlika. Mao ni sila ang ginatawag natong noble class. So karon, mo ni sila mga dato or they are the rich people. So now let's go to the sultanates. So what comes in your mind when you hear the word sultanates? When we say the sultanates, Wallacen and Visayas were largely a patchwork of independent polities. A different situation was unfolding in Mindanao. From the 1400s onwards, the various communities in Sulu and Maguindanao were organizing themselves into sultanates. So, na-form ni siya dito sa Mindanao. Okay, most likely, this is a little in Luzon and then largely in Visayas and then unfolding in Mindanao. From the 1400s onwards, the various communities in Sulu and Maguindanao were organizing themselves into sultanates. So there is a Sulu sa Maguindanao, they are forming or they're organizing the sultanates. The sultanates of Sulu and Maguindanao represented a significant political advancement in pre-colonial Philippines. The Muslim communities of Mindanao achieved a level of political unity and stability that enabled them to establish strong diplomatic relations with other Asian communities and successfully resist the Spanish conquest. So that's why uh, daghan pud na patayo nga to ang mga kuano sultanate sa una nga mga Spaniards na gusto magsakop ato nga mga islands. So in terms of structure, the Mindanao Sultanates had a degree of decentralization, and Sultan was the foremost leader of the Sultanate. Under him, several datos administered the barangays in his domain. The datos in turn were part of a council called the Roma Bichara, which assisted or provided counsel to the Sultan. This council also included aristocrats known as the Panglima. So the Bichara oversaw the other officials of the state. which included the wazir. So, sa ang wazir, they are the advisors. The rahalaut, they are the leader of the maritime forces. And the qadi, which is the magistrate. That is the sultanate. Now let's move forward to the next one. So, now let's talk about the colonial or the Spanish colonialism in the Philippines. So because mas daghan ang mga Spanish and then gamay la ang mga Filipino na they are able to fight back in a war. So here comes now na colonize ta sa Spanish or sa mga ano Spaniards. So Spanish colonialism in the Philippines. So colonial administration of the Philippines centered on the office of the Governor General. So, meaning in the colonial administration, ang nagadala or kumbaga he is the highest leader. They are called the Governor General. So, who is Governor General? So, he was the highest colonial official in the Philippines and the representative of Spanish monarch in the country. So, siya ang representative of the Spanish monarch in the country. So, the Renaissance, a period of cultural and intellectual rebirth in Europe during the 14th century, introduced the desire for exploration, acquisition of knowledge, and discovery among Europeans. So this gave way to the Age of Discovery, which resulted in greater contact and trading relations between Europe and Asia. So kani po siya nga Spanish colonialization, guys, na po siya ay maayo nga resulta. It is because there is now contact and trading relation between the Europe and Asia. So one offshoot of the age of discovery was colonialism. So an economic and political ideology that influenced the European kingdoms to embark on voyages on exploration and conquest. So mo ni nauso na ato nga time ang colonialism. So this is an economic and political ideology. So meaning gusto nila ma-influensyahan ang matag lugar, okay, with their economic and political ideology. So to embark on voyages of exploration and conquest. So that's why colonialism believes that the power and influence of a country is based on the number of territories it conquers and colonies it establishes. So they form uh, voyages of exploration. So nagabuhat sila og mga or nagatrain sila og mga tao. They are good in voyaging, so meaning kanang pangdagatan. So they are also good in exploration and conquest. That's why we are being colonized by the Spanish. Now, let's go to the next one. Okay, so let's go to the colonial governance. So what is colonial governance? So in the Philippines, experienced several challenges. And then, most significant among these were the rampant corruption and abuse of authority by the colonial officials and priests. So, kanina karon ang Spanish colonial na governance. But ang pangit lang ani is they are very corrupt. Kaya harap-harapan ang ilahang pag-corrupt. So, if there is a tax, kanang harap-harapan dyan nakuhaan o para sa ilaha o para sa gobyerno. And then abuse of authority, so they are also abusive. That's why there are a lot of kanang uh, mga women in the old or in the past days na ang gipaangkan og priest or colonial officials. So that's why. So now let's go to the next slide. So let's have the next slide. So let's go to Illustratus, or this is what we call the propaganda movement. So, most likely, di ba, kinsa man dahil gusto nga maano no, mahimong colonize or mahimong kulong, just like a bird. Kung imo siya ikulong, dili gid siya gusto. And then, there's a tendency nga, kung ma-open na siya, mulayas gid siya or mulupad gid siya in layo. So, just like in our country, we don't want to be colonized by somebody or colonized by different people. So that's why here comes the propaganda movement. So in the propaganda movement, guys, there is here we have the execution of Gomborza in 1872. So this brought about a profound change in the nationalist movement. So this event may have impeded the initial movement for reforms, but the death of the native priest brought about the awakening of a new generation of nationalists and the further growth of nationalist consciousness. So, it means guys na na-form diri ang mga ilustro or ilustrado. So, kinsa ni siyang mga ilustrados? So, ilustrados were the Filipino intellectuals that articulated the nationalist sentiments of Filipinos. So, Rizal and other propagandists worked together to spread nationalist ideals and push for reforms in the colonial government. So, kinsa ni mga ilustrado? So, kanino sila ang mga bright nga mga Pilipino? So, just like Jose Rizal, so they doesn't fight by sword or by guns, but they fight with pens. So sila ang ano, nagahatag og inspirasyon or motivation para nga ma-spread ang nationalist ideas. So, meaning, para makuha nato ang ato ang sariling country. Now, let's move forward to the next one. Okay, so that would be all. The last one would be the Illustrado. So most likely, guys, if you want to know more about our lesson, you can also read uh, Philippine Politics and Governance na author is si Arnel E. Joven, PH.D. So from pages 66 to 87 to know more about the early political system from pre-colonial times until the Philippine Revolution. Okay, so if you do have any questions, guys, you can type your questions in the comment section, and then you can also PM me for your questions, queries, and clarifications. So thank you so much, guys. Always remember to make your parents proud and always do your best. And always remember to do your best in your assessments. So see you in your assessments. Bye. Have a great day.